Good afternoon. We're convening the joint committees on transportation and education in the Senate here in conference room 229, as well as online, for the purpose of hearing one measure, SB 2544. We'll just note that in case we lose the feed, we'll find another date for this agenda item. Otherwise, we do have testimony, we'll note, in writing from a number of our testifiers today. So for those who are testifying in person, we just ask you to summarize your comments so we can get to everybody. And with that, on SB 2544, this is relating to safe routes to schools. It establishes the Safe Routes to Schools Advisory Committee. And testifying first is the Department of Transportation.
Hello, Chair. Ed Sniffen from the Department of Transportation. Then our testimony in opposition.
Thank you. Up next is Department of Budget and Finance. Comments? Department of Health, or excuse me, State Council on Developmental Disabilities. In support, Department of Health with comments. Hawaii Bicycling League in support, Bike Share Hawaii in support, Aloha Care in support. Apologize. Oh,
support.
sorry.
We'll
Please
stand,
go ahead.
yeah, we'll stand on our testimony. Thank you so much, chairs. Have a happy Valentine's Day.
Oh, thank you. American Heart Association in support, Get Fit Kauai. With us in support, Ulupono Initiative.
Good afternoon, Chair Lee, Chair Kidani, members of the committees, Michael Munikata on behalf of the Ulupono Initiative. We'll stand on our testimony in support. Thank you.
Thank you. Path Hawaii. In support. Maui Bicycling League. In support. Hawaii Public Health Institute.
Aloha, chairs. Amanda Fernandez on behalf of Hawaii Public Health Institute. I'm also here on behalf of the statewide Obesity Prevention Task Force. We strongly support this measure. It was one of 3 priorities chosen by the task force over the summer to push this year that we feel will have one of the greatest impacts on health, especially with our keiki. We really appreciate the committee's hearing this important bill, and we do hope it will move forward. We believe that it is all communities' responsibility to take care of kids. If kids are being hit by cars, struck by cars on their way to school, and we know that a lot of the pedestrian incidents and car crashes that are happening that involve kids happen during the hours, when they're going to or from school. And we know that a lot of our infrastructure is not made for kids to safely walk, bike, roll, or bus to school. And we're hoping that Safe Routes to School fully implemented in Hawaii will go a long way in changing that and make sure that we can move away from an auto-centric society and really enhance the health and well-being of all children in the state. We're available for any questions. Thank you so much for hearing the measure.
Thank you. Up next is Blue Zones Project Hawaii in support, American Diabetes Association support, and Office of Hawaiian Affairs with comments. We have additional support from 16 individuals with 1 in opposition. Is there anyone who's with us today wishing to testify who's been missed? Get everybody? Okay. With that, that's all our testifiers. Are there any questions?
No questions.
Chair.
Thank you, Chair. For Department of Transportation, Ed Sniffen.
Yes, Chair.
How much funding or funds are we talking about?
For the federal Safe Routes to School program, the funding stopped in 2012. So the funds that are left over in the federal Safe Routes to School program is like 1.3 million, 800,000 for infrastructure, and about 500,000 for non-infrastructure. At this time, there's an IIJA. In IIJA, Safe Routes to School is recognized again. MAP 21 took it out. IIJA recognizes it again, but there is no funding that's dedicated to it.
So we don't anticipate any more funds being added to this Safe Routes to School program?
Not in the existing legislation. So the way the Congress had pushed forward is identifying it as a program again, but not identifying any funding towards it. So there's a potential that there could be funding in the future that gets directed towards it, but there's no funding at this time.
So what would it cost to hire a full-time safe routes to school coordinator?
I think all loaded, I mean, loaded rate, I'm assuming this would be like an SR 26, SR 28 kind of person. Loaded rate would be about 120,000.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Further questions?
I have a question.
Oh, Vice Chair.
Yes, so Ed, since the department had been doing this before, and you're already familiar with the program, so if you have a position for the, as noted in the bill, the coordinator, do you need a committee to tell you what to do?
I don't think so, Senator. From my perspective, so we've had this program for a while.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yes.
We're trying to wind down the funding that's existing in the program. The problem has always been when we push funding out towards communities, community groups or counties, it's very difficult to get applicants coming in for the program. Partially because when you use federal funding on anything, the requirements for delivering that project go up. So it's very difficult. From our perspective, we're trying to see what we can do with federal highways to see if we can potentially utilize that funding within the state program and then put out state funding to replace it. I think it'd be a lot easier for a lot of community groups to use state funding versus the federal one.
And you can continue the program rather than wait until you got federal funds.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
The premise of this bill is that there is no point of contact within the division or within DOT to have these conversations with, which is not the case. I mean, we push out our Hawaii's bike plan refresh and our pedestrian master plan to ensure that we get as much input as possible from the community. Happy to have the conversation with anybody. We absolutely support getting kids to school safely. But if you look at $800,000 for a statewide program, it's not going to be enough. So we've been advocating for pushing for these as CIP projects that we push out from the division to take care of a lot of big needs versus just small little ones in different areas.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, chairs.
Further questions on this measure?
I have another
Sure.
question, Ed with DOT. So with the 1.3 million in the fund currently, is this money spoken for? Do you have projects to use it for?
Good question, Chair. We had two projects that were taking up the 800,000, but both of the recipients dropped out. They said they couldn't deliver the projects. So it's back into the system again. We're pushing a project forward in Nanakuli to improve the pedestrian paths on the Mauka side of Farrington Highway. And as you and I both know, that area that has road, curb, it's slanted, it's very difficult to use, and it connects up to the Nanakuli schools that are in the valley. So we're going to change those out. It's $15 million. And we're thinking that if we cannot find a recipient for the 800,000, we would roll that money into that project to make sure it gets expended.
Thank you for that, Ed.
Thank you.
Further questions? If not, I've got just a couple. And following up on Senator Kidani's questions about sources of funding, as far as IAJA, I mean, at least notwithstanding who knows what may be in the future, let's just count that out for the moment. But for what we have right now, what's in the pipeline for the next 5 years, are there other grant opportunities for these kinds of projects that the state and counties and so forth can apply for?
Absolutely. There's significant amounts of money in discretionary grants that are available to states and counties. And some of those discretionary grants are only available to counties. So all told, in the programs that are coming through, about 50 billion that's available over the next 5 years in discretionary grants.
That's all competitive that we'd have to compete with other states and so forth. Nothing's guaranteed.
Correct.
Thanks. And then just following up with HPHA, I believe it was, unless Department of Health is here.
Yeah. And Chris, I should add, just on that note, our statewide programs are gearing up towards those discretionary grants for the state. I got to say though, 85% of the schools are actually on the county systems. So there's only about 15% of schools that are on state systems. For those areas, we're pushing the priorities for those schools. But on the county system, we're not dictating to the counties what their priorities should be.
Thanks. Excuse me, Department of Health or HPHA still here? Or sorry, not HPHA, I'm sorry, Hawaii Public Health Institute. I'm reading this wrong. My apologies. Didn't mean
Yes,
to make you sit there.
I'm here. And then I also saw that Bev Brody is now on the Zoom.
Okay, thanks very much. So just following up on this, obviously we're having a discussion here where I think everybody's generally in agreement with the end purpose, which is how do we keep kids safe and upgrade infrastructure, particularly in school areas where we have a lot of accidents and crashes and so forth. I know obviously this particular bill came out of an effort with a bunch of different stakeholders over the last year, meeting with, I think, the DOE, Department of Health, other community groups, et cetera. They're obviously not here testifying before us right now, but what was the genesis of that? And really, why are we here and not just, I guess, business as usual, funding projects as they come?
I might actually ask to share the time with Bev if it would be possible to unmute her. I think she could really speak well to the need for the SRTS programming. But I will say that we hear a lot from communities that would otherwise want to apply for funding with the DOT, that the process is too confusing or burdensome. And so what the advisory committee would really do is get all stakeholders on board. It's a collaborative process. It brings the counties and the state and the different agencies, as well as community members together to figure out what are the metrics of success moving forward. How can we streamline these funding sources from the state and the federal government? So it's all of these. And I would love to pass it over to Bev if you have anything to add. I know you didn't get the opportunity to testify earlier.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Oh, I can speak. I apologize profusely for being late. Thanks for calling my name. My name is Bev Brody. I'm the director of Get Fit Kauai, which is the Healthy Eating Active Living Coalition on Kauai County. We have about 1,000 affiliates, just a little over, that represent multiple sectors and disciplines. They include educators, parents, students, elected officials, engineers, city planners, business and community leaders, health officials, bicycle and pedestrian advocates, law enforcement, Hawaii Department of Health, and Hawaii Department of Transportation, and numerous community individuals. And we've been promoting active living for the past, well, since 1994. And we have a countywide Safe Routes to School task force. And we've been able to, in 2012, if you recall, Governor Abercrombie signed that HB 2626 into law. And that was a fine-based mechanism for moving traffic violations. That's what the special fund is about. And HDOT has done an exceptional job, I just have to say, in the disbursement of these funds to the counties based on the formulas that were established through the administration rulemaking and providing annual reports to the legislature. And I guess in answer to your question, sorry, I just wanted to give a little intro, is I think that it would be very, very beneficial. We feel kind of like a little bit alone out here to have a statewide effort to move forward some of these goals, to actually establish performance measures and goals. And it would also be very great to secure some funding with this unburdensome funding from the fine-based funds. I just am curious, where is that money now? Like, none of the counties have seen any of that money for their Safe Routes to School program. I'm just wondering, is there a mechanism right now for us to be able to apply for that money? Or prior to this, just counties were given distributions of the money. Is that not right, Ed? I'm just thinking, right. And that's not happening now. And it sure would be helpful for us to move forward with our programs. But what would be more helpful and what would be a big win is to have a statewide Safe Routes to School coordinator full-time that could bring us together, and we could come up with these performance measure goals, statewide goals, that we could really start to create safer ways for the kids to walk and bike to school and roll. They love it. They love to walk to school. And the benefits of it are numerous, too numerous to take up much more of your time. So
Thanks.
I'm going to, sorry.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
if we could wrap that up. Thank you. I think what I was trying to get at is
Done.
why are we here? And is the DOE with us? I know they had submitted late testimony.
Hello, Chair. Randy Tanaka, DOE.
Hi, Mr. Tanaka. Thank you very much. And I apologize. It might have been a glitch on our end, getting your testimony processed. But that being said, I think fundamentally what we've been looking at is trying to help our schools collectively, whether they're on Kauai or Oahu or wherever. Is there additional, is there additional benefit that can be had trying to coordinate with DOE and DOT here in a way that we can put in place some basic goals or structure to some of this?
The way, our end goal is the same, a safe pathway for our students to get to school and return home. Of recent, in the last year and a half, I've worked much closer with Ed Sniffen, and we're talking about this bill a little bit, and it seems like there are a number of things in place that is led through the DOT. So I think that needs and deserves maybe a revisit on what we're doing there, but it seems like we have a good pathway there. So I would, once again, the objective is the same. I think we're all on the same page. Safety first, to school and from school, and go from there. Thank you.
Thanks. And following up, Ed, just on your end. So in your testimony, I believe you had referenced existing structures within DOT, the State Highway Safety Council, and whatnot to sort of be the place. If we made them the repository where they could come up with programmatic goals and metrics to track progress, et cetera, is that generally a direction that you'd be open to?
Absolutely. As long as it's part of the overall program. Like I said, this shouldn't be considered just the program. The program is a statewide bike and ped program to ensure that we connect everybody. But we're starting with schools first, because that's the area that we see the most conflicts between vehicles, bikes, and pedestrians. So if we're looking at that, I'm good with it. If we're trying to carve this out as a separate piece to just be funded by Safe Routes to School, very difficult for anybody to deliver a program on $600,000. So if we're looking at this as a programmatic, as a goal, as a whole, that's perfect.
And just following up on that, how can we be, so I think this has been part of the issue that's been raised, right? You had obviously way more need than there is resources. Part of, I think, the frustration that we've heard from some folks through the Safe Routes to Schools working group that's been going on for the last year is that there hasn't been the capacity to, or really the programmatic structure to make it easy for schools to, or community groups to come forward to apply, and then make sure that that stuff's prioritized in a way that obviously delivers.
I totally agree. But again, this is a federal process that we got to follow. It's not one that we made up. It's one that we have to follow because that's what's required for that federal funding, which is why I'm saying the difficulty in this whole program is that federal piece. I'm trying to pull that out. Because there's no more funding coming to Safe Routes to School, and it should be funded by TA, that TA piece, I'm trying to look at absorbing into the DOT and making state funds available for that TA program. If that's the case, then there's a lot of community groups that can develop or that can deliver on state funding without having to worry about NEPA, without having to worry about the federal requirements, and without having to worry about those difficulties in that federal program. So for me, that's the goal, to make sure that we can absorb those TA funds into state projects, make state highway funds available to the communities for these types of projects to ensure that we can push that kind of funding out to the public.
Thanks. And so just following up, so for all the working group folks, Department of Health, Department of Education, other various community stakeholders and so forth that have been going at this over the year. I mean, is there a way we can incorporate everybody into the same room? Because, as it stands, I mean, I was in most of those, or a good number of those meetings. DOT was the only one that wasn't actively participating.
What's
And
interesting,
this was the product that came out.
I mean, that was the interesting part. I was never invited to any of those meetings. So I don't know what happened during those discussions. What I do know is I want to make sure that we can treat this as a full program, not just the portion that we portion out of it. I want to make sure that our bike and ped plans are tied into schools and tied into funding that's available to push out significant projects versus just these small pieces. So I don't know what was discussed in the meetings. I do know that all of these groups are invited to the HSHC meetings, and a lot of them come to those meetings to provide input.
And then lastly, on that point, if we were to do something parallel to the State Highway Safety Council within DOT that incorporates a lot of these folks, because State Highway Safety Council itself obviously is every issue under the sun when it comes to highways and safety, and it's mostly prosecutors and law enforcement and other folks, and it's only half filled right now. Is that something you'd be open to? Can we craft something that brings everybody together on the same page so that we know that this particular issue is a priority when it comes to focus on school areas?
So this issue is a priority, but I would rather make sure that we look at it from a programmatic perspective. Talking about one portion of the program without considering the others is very difficult. So if everybody's on the same page with everything, because I get it that bikes and peds got to be a priority for safety, but there's still vehicles on the system. These are still conversations we have to have. So on that State Highway Safety Council, it's not just law enforcement. We have Bicycling League on it. We have Tommy Noyes from Kauai, who's also a bicycle advocate. We try to get as many people from different diverse backgrounds as possible. We just can't get enough people involved. So if these groups would like to be members of the HSC to have these conversations, not only about bike and pedestrian safety, but safety overall on the system, I would happily endorse that.
All right, thank you. Any further questions from any of the members or anybody online? All right, if not, let's.
Oh, Chair, sorry.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Senator Favela.
Basically, this DOT, and I know in the beginning, when I first came in, I know we had this program that we did with Paukia Elementary, walking from the community park to the school, and I was partially with your DOT division. So you're telling me you guys do have this program within your division? It's just that it's not funded? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, there's two pieces, right? State Route to School program. There was a state program and there was a federal program. The state program was transferred from DOT to the state legislature. So it's like a grant in aid now. The federal program is still with DOT and is funded up to, it was funded up to 2012. After that, there's no funding that came in from federal government. So it stands at about 1.3 million, about 800,000 for a CIP and 500,000 for non-CIP work. And that's the only funding that's in that portion.
Do you think having this coordinator, safe routes to school coordinator would enhance this program?
We already have a coordinator that's responsible for, it was responsible for the state portion and is now responsible for the federal portion. So that position still exists in DOT until we expand this funding out. That being said, we have our bike and ped and active transportation group within DOT already. So adding another position won't necessarily help us in implementing this program.
And then, like when it comes to state and city jurisdictions with the safe route to school, is this, if this goes through, is that going to enhance any more things that you guys already have in the pipeline?
So from my perspective, Senator, and this is what we always try to get done. We want to make sure that we push the priorities on our system. We coordinate with the counties on theirs. Last thing I want to do is direct them on the priorities for their system. So for those 85% of schools that are on their system, we would definitely talk about how we connect to them and how we can be additive to it. But having a statewide committee that directs the counties on what they do, I don't know if that's stepping over their purview.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Chair, if I may, please.
I'm sorry, who's speaking here?
I'm sorry, this is Bev Brody speaking.
Hold on, if
No,
you can.
okay. I can be
we're
quiet.
just going through members' questions at the moment. So if you could just sit tight, please. Any other questions from members of the committee? If not, just real quick back to Ed. If you have one,
Sure.
I recognize we've been here for a little while now. If we were to have the ability to continue the Safe Routes to Schools efforts that have been ongoing for the last year, bringing everybody at the table, and I know DOT was invited to every single one of those. Is that something you guys would be open to participating in going forward?
So Chair, I don't understand why we wouldn't continue this conversation within the statewide bike and pedestrian programs that we already have in DOT. I don't understand why we wouldn't pull it into an existing committee like the state safety committee. I mean, from my perspective, those are groups that have already been established, the programs that are already moving forward, and robust communication has already gone on with the communities. So I would much rather roll this through the coordination that we already have versus creating a new group.
All right, I think let me just wrap this up real quick. If there's one last thing on this, basically, I don't know what the answer is here for how to get everybody at the table. I think that's the end goal that we're trying to achieve, because it seems like there are conversations happening in different areas. I think for the moment, we're not going to solve this right here, but for the moment, is DOT open to working with all these other stakeholders, and we can figure out what that looks like as we move forward in session, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Any last questions from anybody else? All right, if not, thank you, everybody. We're going to recess for decision-making. Recess. Good afternoon. We're reconvening the joint committees on transportation and education here in room 329 and online. We've just heard SB 2544 relating to Safe Routes to Schools, which establishes the Safe Routes to School Advisory Committee. Given the conversation and I think some of the questions raised, what we like to do is keep the conversation going, but we're going to do is defer this measure for the time being. We'll come back and see if we can't follow through with a task force and something else to make sure everybody's at the same table, that both the departments and the other community stakeholders are all engaged and we can get everybody on the same page. So we're going to defer the measure for today, and that wraps up our agenda. Mahalo, everybody.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Joint Committees on Education and Higher Education. Welcome to this joint committee hearing. Today is Monday, February 14th at 3:35. We are in hearing room 229. This meeting, including the audio and video of remote participants, is being streamed live on YouTube. You will find links to viewing options for all Senate meetings on the live and on-demand video page of the legislature's website. This Zoom meeting and YouTube live stream event will include the 3:10 p.m. agenda for the Committee on Education and Committee on Higher Education. In the unlikely event that we have to abruptly end this hearing due to major technical difficulties, the committee will reconvene to discuss any outstanding business on Wednesday, February 16th at 3:00 p.m. in this committee room. I'd like to take this time to remind our testifiers that due to time restrictions on our hearings, we will be limiting testimony to 1 minute per testifier per bill. For people participating remotely, please remain muted and video disabled until shortly before it is your turn to testify. When I call your name, unmute yourself and your time will begin. After your 1 minute is completed, staff will mute you so that we can move this hearing along in an orderly and efficient manner. Thank you. For this agenda, we are hearing Senate Bill 2928 SD1 relating to education to establish a working group to study and prepare an implementation plan for agricultural career pathways and report to the legislature, and it makes an appropriation. To testify, Interim Superintendent Keith Hayashi, please.
Good afternoon, Chair Kidani, Chair Kim, and members of the committees. Keith Hayashi, Interim Superintendent of the Department of Education. The department supports the intent of Senate Bill 2928 and provides comments. The department believes in the importance of a career and technical education programs and their ability to prepare our students to be workforce ready. We stand ready to continue dialogue with the legislature as to the best way to move our programs forward. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. Mahalo.
Thank you. Erica Lacroix, Vice President for Community Colleges.
Not present, Chair.
Tammy, are you giving Erica's testimony?
I am. So Tammy Chen for the University of Hawaii. I will stand on our written testimony supporting the bill.
Thank you, Tammy. Brian Miyamoto, Executive Director, testifying for Hawaii Farm Bureau, please.
Good afternoon, Chairs Kidani and Kim and members of the committees. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. We'll stand on a written testimony in support of this measure. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. That concludes the oral testimony. Members, are there any questions of the testifiers?
A question.
Senator Kim.
Thank you. Question for Superintendent Hayashi.
Hello, Senator Kim.
Aloha. So according to your testimony, how do this bill and what you folks are already implemented, how is that differ or how is it similar?
The department has our career pathways, our agriculture, food, and natural resources program of study has 4 different programs of study. It includes agriculture and food production business, animal science, food systems, and natural resource management. So those 4 areas definitely align to the intent of this bill, as well as the department within that particular pathway, within all of our pathways, have pathway advisory councils, and the advisory councils were formed to advise the standards associated with the courses offered in the particular pathway. It's comprised of industry professionals, post-secondary instructors, secondary teachers, and an administrator from the post-secondary or secondary level. So definitely aligns with SB 2928, and so we are able to work together in moving forward with this effort.
So are we duplicating what you're already doing, or is it enhancing, or I'm a little confused here?
No, it's actually enhancing what we're doing, building upon what the department has. It is not a duplication at all.
And so is the DOE supportive?
Yes, we are.
Okay, because you just had comments, so I wasn't sure if you were commenting in support or.
Yes, we're commenting in support.
Okay,
sorry for the confusion. Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Chair.
Further questions, members? Do we need to go into a breakout room?
No need to break up. What do you want to do?
Okay. Thank you. After discussion with the higher ed chair, the recommendation for department, sorry, I'm not the department. The recommendation for the chair of education would be to pass this bill out with amendments. The amendments would be to move the working group to report to the DOE Also to have working group members selected by the DOE in consultation with the university. Third, the appropriation will go to DOE for the purposes of the working group and for technical and non-substantive amendments. Members, questions? If not, for education, pass Senate Bill 2928 SD1 with amendments. Chair votes aye.
For the Committee on Education on SB 2928 SD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair votes aye. Vice Chair Kim.
Aye.
Senator Dela Cruz. Excuse, I vote aye. Senator Favela.
Aye.
4 ayes, Chair, and 1 excuse. Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you.
For the Committee on Higher Education, same recommendation, Senate Bill 2928 SD1 to pass with amendments. Discussion, not, chair votes aye.
Chair's recommendation on higher education SB 2928 SD1 is to pass with amendments. Chair votes aye. Vice Chair Kidani.
Aye.
Senator Keith Agaran. Excused. Senator Wakai. Excused, and Senator Favela.
Aye.
Chair, you have 3 ayes and 2 excused. Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you.
Thank you. This meeting is adjourned. Welcome to the Senate welcome to the Senate Committee on Education. Today is Monday, February 14th. For our 3:15 agenda, we are in room 229. This meeting, including the audio and video of remote participants, is being streamed live on YouTube. You will find links to viewing options for all Senate meetings on the live and on-demand video page of the legislature's website. For this agenda, we have 2 bills. And we will start with Senate Bill 2333 relating to education, appropriates supplemental categorical funding for remote schools, appropriates funds. To testify, Superintendent Hayashi, please.
All right, Chair and Vice Chair Brian Hallett, DOE Assistant Superintendent for Fiscal Services, on behalf of Interim Superintendent Keith Hayashi. The department stands on its testimony in support of this measure and will be available if there are any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Next to testify, Osa Tui Jr., President, Hawaii State Teachers Association.
Aloha, Chair and members of the committee. Laverne Moore speaking on behalf of Osa Tui Jr., President of the Hawaii State Teachers Association. We support Senate Bill 233. Since the passage of Act 51 in 2004, weighted student formula has had the unintended consequences of limiting academic programming for children in small and rural schools. The HSD agrees with this legislation subject to legislative appropriations. A remote school may receive supplemental categorical funding to support additional instructional and support staff in addition to the allocation determined under the weighted student formula that is made to remote school as identified in this bill. To provide all keiki in Hawaii with access to a quality education, the HSD asks your committee to support this bill. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Laverne. Next to testify, Yvonne Lau, Interim Executive Director for Hawaii State Public Charter School Commission.
Good afternoon, Chair Kidani, Vice Chair Kim, members of the committee. The State Public Charter School Commission appreciates this opportunity to submit our testimony and strong support. The Commission deeply appreciates the inclusion of our public charter schools in this funding measure. We look forward to working with you on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yvonne. That concludes the oral testimony. Members, any questions on this bill? If not, we will move on to our second bill, which is Senate Bill 2564 relating to after-school programs, appropriates funds for the Department of Education's resources for enrichment, athletics, culture, and health program to match federal dollars that the state receives for the 21st Century Community Learning Center. To testify, Interim Superintendent Hayashi, please.
Aloha Chair Kidani, Vice Chair Kim, and members of the Senate Committee on Education. Kara Tanimura, Interim Assistant Superintendent for the Office of Strategy, Innovation, and Performance on behalf of Interim Superintendent Hayashi, Department of Education. The department stands on its written testimony in support of Senate Bill 2554 and appreciates the attached appropriation to provide high-quality after-school programs for intermediate and middle school students. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne. Next to testify, Yvonne Lau, Interim Executive Director, Hawaii State Public Charter School Commission.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair Kim, members of the committee. The Public Charter School Commission appreciates this opportunity to submit testimony in strong support of this measure. Just to note, a lot of our public charter schools do apply for and have received funding for this program, so we are deeply grateful for its continued support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yvonne. Next to testify, Osa Tui Jr., President, testifying for Hawaii State Teachers Association.
Aloha Chair, members of the committee, Laverne Moore speaking on behalf of Osa Tui Jr., President of the Hawaii State Teachers Association. We support this bill. After-school programs provide important learning and enrichment opportunities for potentially thousands of our K-12 students across the island. 72% of parents surveyed in Hawaii agree that after-school programs help working parents to keep their job. The intermediate years are important for reversing high school dropout rates and ensuring students remain engaged in their education and community. The REACH program meets this need. To provide this appropriation to match federal dollars to fund the REACH program in Hawaii, the Hawaii State Teachers Association asks your committee to support this bill. Mahalo.
Thank you, Laverne. Next to testify, Dean Nathan Murata, College of Education, please.
Good afternoon, Chair Kidani, Vice Chair Kim, and members of the committee. Nathan Murata, Dean, College of Education here at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. We stand in support of our written testimony, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And this testimony is also from Michael Bruno, Provost of UH Manoa. Next to testify, Paula Adams, Executive Director, Hawaii After School Alliance.
Chair Kidani, Vice Chair Mercado Kim, members of the committee. My name is Paula Adams with the Hawaii After School Alliance. Since the beginning of the pandemic, we have been hosting community meetings with after school programs to share resources, talk stories, and support them as much as we can. In those calls, stories have been told, like the one from a middle school in the Big Island, where half of the kids choose to stay for the after-school programs. The parents are so thankful for the opportunity to have their kids engage in enrichment activities, explore their passions, and learn and fun in a fun and safe environment. On another program in Waimanalo, where the kids learn math through cooking, or a program in Waialua, where students are fully engaged in STEM. For all these reasons, I'm happy to see this bill supporting after-school programs. For the last years and a half, I've been receiving phone calls from parents saying that they need an after-school program for their children. If this bill passes, we'll have more programs for our children to learn, be safe, and engage. Thanks for this opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Paula. Next to testify, Maria Glidden, individual. Maria there, please.
Not present, Chair.
Thank you. That concludes the oral testimony. We had 23 testimonies all in support. Members, questions of the testifiers? If not, do we need to revoke?
I do have a question.
Okay, Senator Kim.
Let's see who's here. I guess Superintendent. So currently the after-school program, the funding, what's the funding like, or is that the obstacle, or is getting people to hire people and getting resources as far as bodies to get the program up and to where it was before?
Aloha, Senator Kim. This is Kara Tanimura. Yes, so the current funding is just under $600,000. That's what we received this past school year. So an increase to 6 million is quite a bit. And yes, the challenge has been getting personnel.
So I guess I'm just wondering from the 600,000 to 6 million, why the big gap in that? And again, is it the funding or is it getting the personnel?
I believe it's the personnel. The general, right now, the REACH funds that we receive in the 600,000 is from general funds.
And it funds all of it's been adequate in funding all of the programs?
It's just for the middle school grades, so just 3 grades. It has been adequate, but we believe the intent of the bill is to match the 21st century funds. That's why it went to 6 million.
Okay,
so 21st century, 21st century is K to 12. So yes.
Okay, and so even though the funding might be there, we may have problems just being able to hire.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members, further questions? You want to go and check back on me? Okay. So members, the recommendation of the chair will be to pass out with amendment Senate Bill 2333, which authorizes supplemental category funding for remote schools. Senate Bill 2333 to pass with amendments. Chair votes aye. Oh, I'm sorry. The amendments are to expand the definitions to include the additional schools mentioned in the Department of Education testimony, which is Kaunakakai, Kilohana, Mauna Loa Elementary, and Molokai Middle School. There's also technical and non-substantive amendments. Questions? If not, Senate Bill 2333 to pass with amendments. Chair votes aye.
Chair votes aye on Senate Bill 2333, pass with amendments. Let's see, I'm going to call roll just to see who's here. Vice Chair votes aye. Senator De La Cruz. Okay, I'll come back to him. Senator Kanuha.
Aye.
Senator Favela.
Aye.
And Senator De La Cruz. On Senate Bill 2333 with amendments. Okay, excuse, we're 4 members present, all voting aye, 1 member excused, recommendations adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving on to the final bill, Senate Bill 2564 relating to after-school programs. Recommendation of the chair is to pass with amendments. The amendments is to delete the appropriation amount, but noting the amount in the committee report for consideration by Ways and Means, the next committee, and also to defect the date to July 1, 2050. Questions, members? Senate Bill 2564 to pass with amendments. Chair votes aye.
Chair votes aye on Senate Bill 2564 with amendments. Any members present voting in opposition? Any members voting with reservations? Hearing none. And do we have Senator De La Cruz online? No. So 4 members present, all voting aye, 1 member excused. Recommendations adopted.
Is that final? Okay. Thank you, members. That concludes the meeting from the Committee of Education.